January 1924. The world was screaming toward modernity. In New York City, the Grand Central Palace was more than a building. It was a cathedral of American ambition. This was the National Automobile Show, the ultimate proving ground for an industry that was still defining itself. Amidst the heavy scent of unburned gasoline and polished brass, hundreds of manufacturers fought for a sliver of the public's imagination. But one exhibit didn't just attract a crowd. Narcotized by its presence, the crowd refused to leave. They were staring at the Chrysler 6. To the untrained eye, it was a beautiful machine. To the engineers from Ford and General Motors, it was a terrifying declaration of war. In an era where affordable meant primitive, the Chrysler 6 was an anomaly. It boasted a high-compression, 6-cylinder engine, a mechanical heart that pumped out 68 horsepower. In 1924, that wasn't just performance. It was a miracle for a car priced at $1,565. But the real shockwave came from the wheels. While the industry giants, Ford's Model T and Chevrolet Superior, still relied on archaic mechanical brakes that often only gripped the rear wheels, Chrysler introduced 4-wheel hydraulic brakes. It was a leap in safety and physics that made every other car in the building look like a relic of the 19th century. Standing beside this machine was Walter Chrysler. To the public, he was a new name. To the insiders, he was the most dangerous man in Detroit. Why? Because Walter Chrysler didn't just build a car. He had spent the last decade deconstructing the DNA of his rivals. His journey was a masterclass in what we now call competitive knowledge transfer. This wasn't a story of a garage inventor hitting a stroke of luck. This was a story of a corporate titan who had infiltrated the highest echelons of the establishment. Chrysler had been the head of Buick and the executive vice president of manufacturing at General Motors. He hadn't just worked there. He had lived inside the machine. Think of it as a decade-long reconnaissance mission. At Ford, Chrysler had decoded the choreography of mass production, the brutal, relentless efficiency of the assembly line where every second was $1 and every motion was calculated. At General Motors, under the legendary Alfred Sloan, he internalized the architecture of complexity, how to manage a multi-brand empire, how to squeeze profits from a labyrinthine supply chain, and how to market a car not just as a tool, but as a status symbol. When Walter Chrysler walked out of the General Motors headquarters, he didn't take blueprints. He didn't need them. He took something infinitely more lethal, the operational logic of success. He knew exactly where Ford was rigid and where General Motors was bloated. He knew the gaps in their armor. The results were meteoric. Within 6 years, the nascent Chrysler Corporation surged to become the third-largest automaker in America. By 1936, just 12 years after that New York debut, Chrysler did the unthinkable. It surpassed the Ford Motor Company to become the second-largest automaker in the world. Critics might call it industrial espionage. History calls it genius. Chrysler never violated a contract or stole a physical trade secret. He simply practiced a superior form of synthesis. He took Ford's efficiency, married it to General Motors' organizational structure, and infused it with his own obsession with engineering excellence. The 1924 Chrysler 6 was the Trojan horse of the automotive world. It looked like a product, but it was actually a concentrated dose of industry-wide intelligence, redeployed with surgical precision against the very giants who had taught him everything. This is the story of how one man leveraged profound insider knowledge to disrupt a monopoly and build a dynasty that would last a century. To understand how a man could outmaneuver the giants of Detroit in 1924, we must travel back half a century to a time when steel and steam ruled the American landscape, and a young apprentice was learning the secret language of machines. Walter Chrysler's own journey began far from the gleaming factory floors of Detroit. He was born in 1875 in Wamego, Kansas, into a family of decidedly modest means. His father, a steadfast locomotive engineer for the Union Pacific Railroad, provided a solid working-class income, ensuring security and stability, though certainly not affluence. Young Walter grew up steeped in the rich mechanical culture of the railroad that permeated many small Kansas towns of that era. The rhythmic clang of the machine shop, the towering smoke-stained roundhouse where colossal locomotives were serviced and repaired, these were the epicenters of technical activity and innovation. Here, skilled mechanics, revered for their precision and ingenuity, enjoyed both community respect and decent wages, a stark contrast to the often precarious existence of common laborers. Chrysler's early career in the railroads proved to be the bedrock upon which his entire future empire would be built. He embarked on his professional life at the tender age of 17, beginning as an apprentice machinist. In the grimy, oil-scented workshops, he learned the tactile language of metal and machinery, mastering the operation of lathes, drill presses, milling machines, and a host of other complex machine tools. His progression was swift and resolute, a testament to his innate mechanical aptitude and relentless work ethic. By the age of 29, he had earned the esteemed title of Master Mechanic. His years toiling in the railroad shops were an informal, yet profoundly effective, education in mechanical engineering, gained through invaluable practical experience. The sheer scale of railroad operations exposed him to large-scale industrial organization, demonstrating in stark terms how the systematic management of complex, interconnected operations could dramatically improve efficiency, reduce costs, and ensure reliability. This hands-on tutelage in precision and process would later become the core tenets of his automotive philosophy. However, master mechanic skills and a comfortable life in the railroads were not enough for a mind that craved the future. In 1908, Chrysler's mechanical world collided with a new obsession that would change history. The pivotal transition from the steadfast world of railroads to the dynamic, nascent automobile industry occurred in 1908. By then, Chrysler, age 33 and holding the respectable position of superintendent of motive power for the Chicago Great Western Railroad, attended the annual Chicago Automobile Show. It was there, amidst the cacophony of engines and the chatter of enthusiastic crowds, that he encountered a pristine white Locomobile touring car. The machine captivated him utterly, sparking an obsession to comprehend the intricate mechanics of how these novel conveyances functioned. Despite earning a comfortable annual salary of $4,000, a substantial sum for the era, Chrysler, driven by an unquenchable thirst for knowledge, took a bold financial gamble. He borrowed $4,300, more than his entire annual income, to purchase that very Locomobile. His intent was not to drive it for pleasure or prestige, but to methodically disassemble it, component by component, and meticulously study its construction. This audacious purchase served as a profound revelation of essential aspects of Chrysler's character and his unique approach to problem-solving. Firstly, it underscored his unwavering willingness to assume significant financial risks in the pursuit of knowledge. He believed deeply that certain insights were worth the investment, no matter how steep. Secondly, it demonstrated his fundamental learning methodology. He acquired knowledge through rigorous, hands-on study and practical experimentation, rather than relying on theoretical education or abstract concepts. He was a doer, a tactile learner. Finally, it revealed his systematic approach to complex mechanical challenges. He innately understood the power of breaking down intricate systems into their individual, manageable components, studying each part in isolation, and then, with an engineer's precision, reassembling them into a fully functioning whole. These defining characteristics, risk-taking, hands-on learning, and systematic analysis, would become the guiding principles that underpinned his eventual quest to build a formidable automobile empire. Before formally entering the automotive sector, Chrysler reached the pinnacle of his railroad career as the works manager for the American Locomotive Company, ALCO, in Pittsburgh. Applying his rigorous principles of plant organization, he transformed the struggling, unprofitable facility into a highly lucrative venture within just 2 years. His remarkable success at ALCO, where his salary eventually reached $12,000 annually, caught the attention of the financial elite who controlled the nascent automobile industry. The long-awaited opportunity arrived courtesy of James Storrow, an ALCO director, who arranged a meeting with Charles W. Nash, the president of the struggling Buick Motor Company. Nash recruited Chrysler to join Buick as its works manager in 1911. Chrysler accepted the offer for $6,000 annually, taking a massive 50% pay cut from his ALCO salary because he recognized the limitless long-term potential of the automobile industry. Walter Chrysler walked away from General Motors with $10 million in his pocket and a lifetime of secrets in his head. He was 45, retired, and wealthier than he ever dreamed. But for a man whose pulse beat in rhythm with an engine, the quiet life wouldn't last long. A failing company named Maxwell was about to call, and Chrysler was ready to build his own throne. Chrysler's rise at Buick was nothing short of meteoric, fueled by his undeniable ability to diagnose and solve complex manufacturing problems with remarkable efficiency. When he arrived, Buick was a company struggling with the vestiges of craft production, assembling approximately 45 cars daily. The production floor was a scene of skilled artisans individually fitting parts, often with considerable hand finishing, leading to slow output and inconsistent quality. Within a mere 2 years under Chrysler's rigorous management, Buick's daily production skyrocketed, exceeding 200 cars. This extraordinary increase wasn't achieved through revolutionary new techniques or massive capital infusions, but rather through the systematic and disciplined application of fundamental industrial engineering principles. Chrysler standardized parts, insisting on tighter tolerances from suppliers to ensure interchangeability. He meticulously reorganized the workflow, establishing more logical sequences that minimized wasted motion and optimized the progression of vehicles through the assembly process. He implemented systematic worker training, encouraging specialization to increase efficiency, and crucially, he maintained rigorous quality control at every stage of production, reducing rework and ensuring a consistently higher standard for finished vehicles. The promotion to president of Buick in 1916 conferred upon Chrysler broad authority over one of General Motors' most strategically vital divisions. Buick, under Chrysler's expert stewardship, had become General Motors' veritable profit engine, a robust source of cash flow that directly financed William Durant's ambitious acquisitions and fueled General Motors' aggressive expansion across the automotive landscape. Chrysler's undeniable success at Buick made him an indispensable asset to General Motors' leadership, simultaneously exposing him to the corporation's broader strategic imperatives, its intricate financial structures, and its often idiosyncratic organizational methodologies. But as Buick became the crown jewel of General Motors, a storm was gathering at the corporate headquarters. The man of order was about to collide with the man of chaos. Chrysler's relationship with William Durant, General Motors' charismatic founder and president, was complex, ultimately proving to be an irreconcilable clash of philosophies and personalities. Durant was undoubtedly a brilliant salesman, a charismatic empire builder with an uncanny knack for identifying opportunities. Yet, he was, by all accounts, a notoriously poor manager, prone to impulsive decisions and a deep-seated resistance to the kind of systematic, data-driven organization that Chrysler so fervently valued. The two men repeatedly locked horns over critical issues ranging from manufacturing investments and ambitious expansion plans to the fundamental structure of management within the sprawling corporation. Durant's chaotic, intuition-driven leadership style was a constant source of profound frustration for Chrysler, whose entire professional ethos was built upon order, efficiency, and meticulous planning. The tensions between them finally reached a breaking point in 1919. Durant, without consulting Chrysler, announced a $6 million frame plant for Flint, a move Chrysler opposed as financially reckless since he had already secured a cheaper supplier contract. Frustrated by Durant's chaotic, intuition-driven leadership and his constant interference, Chrysler abruptly resigned from General Motors in November 1919. Durant bought out Chrysler's General Motors stock for an astounding $10 million, making Chrysler one of the wealthiest men in America. He walked away from an enormous $500,000 annual salary and the apparent security of one of the most powerful positions in American industry, a decision that baffled many at the time. His resignation at age 45, armed with substantial personal savings but no clear next venture, might have seemed a perilous gamble. However, Chrysler had, during his transformative decade at Buick and General Motors, accumulated an invaluable trove of knowledge and expertise. He possessed an unparalleled understanding of automobile manufacturing at every conceivable level, from the intricate workings of the machine shop to the complex choreography of final assembly. He knew precisely how to organize supplier relationships to ensure both the consistent availability and uncompromising quality of parts. He had mastered the intricate financial aspects of automobile production, including sophisticated cost accounting and the critical management of working capital. Furthermore, he had observed, analyzed, and deeply understood both Ford's unparalleled mass production efficiency and General Motors' innovative multi-brand strategy, grasping the inherent strengths and latent weaknesses of each approach. When Walter Chrysler walked away from General Motors in 1919, he wasn't just a millionaire. He was a walking encyclopedia of the American automotive industry. He had mastered the craft in the railroad shops, the volume at Buick, and the strategy at the highest levels of General Motors. He understood Ford's rigidity and Durant's chaos better than they understood themselves. At 45, with $10 million in his pocket, he was the industry's most lethal free agent. The era of being an employee was over. The era of the Chrysler Empire was about to begin. Walter Chrysler's transformative leadership at Buick Motor Company from 1911 to 1916 stands as a monumental demonstration of his ability to apply systematic manufacturing principles to achieve truly dramatic productivity improvements. Understanding the precise methodologies he employed not only illuminates his management prowess but also reveals the depth of his learning about automobile production, a knowledge base that would later form the very foundation of the Chrysler Corporation. When Chrysler arrived at Buick, the company was emblematic of many early automobile manufacturers, essentially a collection of skilled workers and mechanics engaged in what was largely craft production. Each car was built almost individually, with parts often fitted and laboriously adjusted by hand to ensure they functioned together. This inherently labor-intensive approach meant production rates were severely limited by the individual speed and skill of the workers assembling and adjusting components. Consequently, quality varied significantly, dependent on each worker's individual aptitude and attention to detail, and costs remained high due to the necessity of employing expensive, highly skilled labor. The production rate of approximately 45 cars daily in 1911 translated to roughly 9,000 cars annually, a significant volume for the period, but one that Chrysler instinctively knew was far below its potential. He recognized that Buick possessed the market demand, the raw engineering talent, and the necessary capital to expand dramatically, but that pervasive production bottlenecks were choking its potential for growth. His explicit mandate from James Storrow was clear: eliminate those bottlenecks and scale production aggressively to meet burgeoning market demand. Chrysler's first step was a meticulous, almost scientific analysis of the entire production process to precisely identify the constraints. He walked the factory floor incessantly, observing with a keen, discerning eye how cars progressed through assembly, where critical bottlenecks invariably occurred, and where workers idled, waiting for parts or for preceding operations to complete. He painstakingly timed each operation, stopwatch in hand, to ascertain precisely how long each task genuinely required. He rigorously examined parts, not just for function but for subtle quality problems that necessitated costly rework during later stages of assembly. This systematic, data-driven observation provided the empirical data essential for a rational and effective reorganization. The improvements Chrysler instituted in part standardization and interchangeability addressed a fundamental and pervasive problem in early automobile manufacturing. Parts were frequently made by various suppliers to loose, often inconsistent, tolerances, necessitating considerable fitting and adjustment during the final assembly process. For instance, a connecting rod might be machined slightly oversized, requiring a skilled worker to meticulously file it down to fit properly onto the crankshaft. Chrysler, recognizing this inefficiency, insisted that suppliers adhere to significantly tighter tolerances, ensuring that parts would fit precisely without the need for time-consuming, labor-intensive adjustments. This required extensive collaboration with suppliers, often involving providing technical assistance to improve their own manufacturing processes and quality control. But the payoff was immense. It dramatically reduced assembly time and labor costs. The workflow reorganization Chrysler implemented created more logical and efficient sequences. Cars moved through the factory in consistent, predictable patterns, and workers and their specialized tools were strategically positioned to minimize wasted motion and maximize throughput. Chrysler closely studied the emerging assembly line methods that Henry Ford was pioneering at his revolutionary Highland Park plant. However, he astutely recognized that Buick's current production volume, while growing, did not yet justify the massive capital investment required for Ford's continuous moving assembly lines. Instead, he devised an ingenious hybrid approach, creating progressive assembly stations where cars moved from one dedicated work area to the next on simple dollies or basic conveyors, with each station performing a specific set of operations. Worker training and specialization were also cornerstones of Chrysler's reforms. Instead of relying on highly skilled craftsmen to build complete automobiles from start to finish, he transitioned to a system where workers performed specific operations repeatedly, thereby becoming highly proficient, even expert, in those singular tasks. A worker might spend an entire workday installing engines, developing an unparalleled efficiency and precision at that specific task. This specialization not only dramatically increased productivity, but also lowered the overall skill level required for many tasks, enabling Buick to employ a larger number of less expensive, semi-skilled workers, supervised by a smaller contingent of highly skilled craftsmen. The quality control systems Chrysler implemented were equally transformative. He introduced inspection points throughout the entire production process, where parts and subassemblies were meticulously checked for defects before being allowed to proceed to the next stage. Defective parts were identified and rejected before they could be installed in cars, drastically reducing the costly and time-consuming rework required later in the process. Final inspection before delivery became a far more systematic affair, utilizing comprehensive checklists to ensure that all systems were rigorously tested and met specifications. These stringent quality controls, while initially seeming to slow production as defects were discovered and addressed, ultimately increased overall productivity by significantly reducing the time and resources spent fixing problems in finished cars. The results of Chrysler's reforms were nothing short of spectacular. By 1913, Buick was producing over 200 cars daily, an astonishing nearly seven-fold increase from the rate when Chrysler first arrived. By 1916, daily production had soared past 500 cars. Annual production reached an impressive 124,000 vehicles in 1916, catapulting Buick to become the second largest automobile manufacturer in America, surpassed only by the Ford Motor Company. Crucially, this immense production increase was achieved largely within the same factory buildings, a powerful testament that the gains were primarily a result of brilliant organizational improvements and managerial efficiency, rather than simply massive capital investment in new facilities. Buick's financial performance improved proportionally, making it a jewel in the General Motors crown. Its profits in 1916 exceeded $13 million, an enormous sum for the era, representing a healthy return on sales of approximately 12 to 15%. These substantial profits formed the financial bedrock of the burgeoning General Motors empire, funding Durant's ambitious expansion plans and numerous corporate acquisitions. Chrysler's undeniable success at Buick made him invaluable to General Motors' leadership and firmly established his reputation as arguably the preeminent manufacturing executive in the entire automobile industry. The promotion to president of Buick in 1916 bestowed upon Chrysler sweeping authority over all aspects of the division, extending far beyond the factory floor. He now oversaw product planning, sales, and finance, in addition to manufacturing. This significant promotion came with an unprecedented salary offer from William Durant of $500,000 annually, comprising a massive base salary and lucrative stock bonuses. A truly enormous compensation package that reflected Buick's immense profitability and Chrysler's indispensable contribution. This expanded role exposed him to critical facets of the automobile business well beyond his core manufacturing expertise, including the intricacies of product design, the art of marketing, and the vital importance of dealer relations. The crucial engineering knowledge Chrysler acquired at Buick was cultivated through close collaboration with a cohort of exceptionally talented engineers. These included Charles Nash, who had preceded Chrysler as Buick president and later founded his own successful automobile company, and visionary figures like Arthur Mason and Orland Hunt, who were instrumental in designing Buick's advanced six-cylinder engines. Through these interactions, Chrysler gained invaluable insights into how engine design profoundly affected manufacturing costs, how specific engineering choices directly influenced vehicle reliability and performance, and how strategic product features could be leveraged and marketed to justify premium pricing. This newfound engineering acumen perfectly complemented his already formidable manufacturing expertise, creating a truly holistic understanding of the automotive business. Managing the dealer network taught Chrysler the vital mechanics of automobile distribution. Buick, like most manufacturers of the era, sold its vehicles through a network of independent dealers who purchased cars outright and then resold them to end customers. Managing these crucial relationships required a delicate balance, ensuring the dealers' profitability while simultaneously pushing them to achieve ambitious sales volumes. It demanded providing comprehensive support to dealers, including advertising campaigns, innovative financing programs, and robust warranty support. Furthermore, it necessitated a constant, careful balancing act between production output and actual dealer orders, a critical skill to avoid accumulating unsold inventory or, conversely, failing to supply dealers when demand was strong. As Buick's production volume swelled, its supply relationships grew commensurately more sophisticated. Major components, including vehicle bodies, wheels, complex electrical systems, and interior upholstery, were purchased from a diverse array of specialized external suppliers. Managing these intricate relationships required ensuring consistent quality, skillfully negotiating favorable prices, meticulously coordinating complex delivery schedules, and often providing invaluable technical assistance to help suppliers meet Buick's increasingly stringent requirements. Through this experience, Chrysler learned how critical vertical integration decisions, whether to manufacture components internally or outsource them to specialized suppliers, directly impacted both costs and operational flexibility. Walter Chrysler's pivotal experience in General Motors corporate leadership, spanning from 1916 to 1919, provided him with an unparalleled high-level exposure to the strategic, financial, and organizational dimensions inherent in managing a vast, multi-division automobile corporation. This invaluable experience, gained at the very highest echelons of General Motors, furnished him with profound knowledge concerning corporate strategy and organizational structure, insights that would prove utterly invaluable when he embarked on the ambitious journey of building his own company. The organizational chaos that Chrysler encountered upon joining General Motors reflected the idiosyncratic and often impulsive management style of William Durant, combined with the corporation's incredibly rapid and often uncontrolled growth through aggressive acquisition. Durant, a compulsive entrepreneur, had famously assembled General Motors by purchasing dozens of disparate automobile manufacturers, various parts suppliers, and a host of related businesses between 1908 and 1910. And again after he dramatically regained control in 1916. These acquisitions were, to put it mildly, loosely coordinated. Each division often operated semi-independently, with little systematic sharing of best practices or optimization of shared resources. The resulting financial management problems were so severe and pervasive that they gravely threatened General Motors' very survival. Durant, driven by intuition and an unshakable belief in his own judgment, made major acquisition and investment decisions based on gut feeling and fleeting opportunities rather than careful, data-driven financial analysis. He frequently used General Motors stock as currency for these acquisitions, often diluting the value for existing shareholders. Even more dangerously, he speculated heavily in General Motors stock, leveraging vast sums of borrowed money, thereby creating enormous financial risks that extended far beyond the corporation itself and into his own personal finances. These reckless practices deeply alarmed the banking syndicate and the powerful DuPont family, both of whom had invested heavily in General Motors and saw their investments imperiled. The profound strategic insights Chrysler gained from observing General Motors' sophisticated multi-brand approach would later profoundly inform the strategy of his own nascent company. General Motors, under the emerging leadership of Alfred Sloan, was meticulously developing and refining the strategy of offering distinct brands at different price points, carefully segmenting the market. Chevrolet catered to entry-level buyers, Pontiac and Oldsmobile targeted the vast middle market, Buick served the upper middle segment, and Cadillac, of course, dominated the luxury sector. This ingenious strategy allowed General Motors to capture customers across every income level and, crucially, to encourage those customers to trade up to more expensive General Motors brands as their incomes and aspirations grew, fostering brand loyalty throughout a consumer's lifespan. His exposure to General Motors' aggressive acquisition strategy taught Chrysler a fundamental lesson: how established manufacturers could achieve robust growth by strategically purchasing smaller companies, thereby acquiring their existing production capacity, established dealer networks, and vital engineering talent, rather than painstakingly building everything from scratch. General Motors had, after all, assembled its vast empire largely through a series of shrewd acquisitions, and while Durant's undisciplined execution had created significant problems, The fundamental strategy of growth through carefully managed acquisition was undeniably sound. Insights into organizational structure were gleaned from observing how General Motors attempted to coordinate operations across its multitude of divisions, while simultaneously trying to allow a degree of divisional autonomy. The inherent tension between central control and divisional independence was a perennial and ongoing management challenge. Too much central control risked stifling initiative and preventing individual divisions from responding swiftly and effectively to dynamic market conditions. Conversely, too much independence bred inefficiencies through duplication of effort and prevented the leveraging of General Motors' immense scale advantages. Finding the optimal balance between these two extremes was a critical and constant management challenge, one that Chrysler internalized deeply. His resignation in 1920 shocked the industry, not least because Chrysler was walking away from an enormous compensation package and the seemingly ironclad security of one of the most powerful positions in American business. But Chrysler, at age 45, had accumulated substantial personal wealth from his General Motors salary and bonuses. He owned a large, impressive home in Flint, Michigan, and his prudent investments provided a comfortable income stream. More importantly, he possessed an unshakable confidence that his unique blend of knowledge, expertise, and formidable reputation would inevitably create new opportunities, whether to return to an executive position at another company, or, more enticingly, to build his own independent enterprise. Crucially, the covenant not to compete and other contractual obligations he had signed were significantly less restrictive than one might expect for an executive of his caliber. Chrysler's employment contract did not include the extensive non-compete provisions that would have typically prevented him from joining rival companies or starting his own automobile firm. This reflected both the era's different approach to employment contracts and, perhaps, General Motors' overconfidence that they could succeed without Chrysler's direct involvement. The absence of such restrictive covenants would prove absolutely crucial in enabling Chrysler to build a directly competing enterprise. The knowledge Chrysler carried with him from General Motors was both comprehensive and remarkably current. He understood General Motors' intricate cost structures intimately, having reviewed the detailed financial data for all divisions. He knew General Motors' vast supplier base, including the pricing and terms of major supply contracts. He had observed General Motors' product development processes from the inside, giving him insight into which models were in the pipeline. He understood General Motors' extensive dealer network structure and compensation models, and he was privy to General Motors' strategic plans for expanding market share and entering new price segments. This knowledge, while highly proprietary and valuable, was not confidential in the narrow legal sense. Chrysler had not signed away his right to use general knowledge gained through employment. However, it was undeniably proprietary information that afforded him enormous strategic advantages if he chose to compete directly against General Motors. He knew precisely where General Motors was strong and, critically, where it was vulnerable. He understood which market segments General Motors served exceptionally well, and, more importantly, which ones it inadvertently neglected. And perhaps most significantly, he knew precisely how to organize and operate an automobile company to achieve the kind of efficiency, profitability, and market penetration that General Motors had so powerfully demonstrated. Walter Chrysler's subsequent involvement with the struggling Maxwell Motor Company and Chalmers Motor Company from 1920 to 1924 provided the opportune vehicle through which he would apply his deeply acquired knowledge to create an independent automobile enterprise that would shake the very foundations of the industry. The stage was set. Chrysler had the capital, the factory, and the finest engineering minds in America hidden away in the old Chalmers plant. Now, it was time to build the car that would prove everyone wrong. The car that would not just carry a name, but a revolution. Walter Chrysler's subsequent involvement with the struggling Maxwell Motor Company and Chalmers Motor Company from 1920 to 1924 provided the opportune vehicle through which he would apply his deeply acquired knowledge to create an independent automobile enterprise that would shake the very foundations of the industry. The saga of how Walter Chrysler transformed these ailing enterprises into the foundation of a new automotive empire stands as a testament to his unparalleled management acumen and prescient strategic vision. The initial entree into this ambitious undertaking came not through a direct solicitation, but rather through the robust banking relationships Chrysler had meticulously cultivated during his influential tenure at General Motors. Maxwell Motor Company, once a proud and formidable manufacturer in the 1910s, had carved out a significant niche producing popular mid-priced cars, placing it in direct competition with established giants like Buick, Oakland, and other respected brands of the era. However, by 1920, the company's once bright prospects had dimmed considerably. Maxwell found itself dangerously overextended financially, a victim of imprudent expansion and a series of grave management missteps. The specter of bankruptcy loomed large and undeniable. In their desperation, the consortium of banks holding Maxwell's substantial debts, facing the very real possibility of massive losses, sought a white knight. An individual with a rare blend of engineering knowledge, manufacturing prowess, and financial reorganization expertise. They needed someone who could orchestrate a complex corporate resuscitation and salvage their imperiled investments. While Chrysler was already deep in the trenches of Willys Overland, the American banking elite realized they had another dying patient on their hands. Maxwell Motor Company was bleeding out, and they knew only one man had the surgical precision to save it. To understand why the banks were willing to gamble everything on him, one must look at his reputation following his abrupt departure from General Motors in late 1919. Chrysler's reputation as an industrial turnaround expert made him highly sought after. Bankers controlling the massive debt of the Willys Overland Motor Company hired him to rescue the firm from impending bankruptcy. They offered him an unprecedented, staggering salary of $1 million a year for 2 years to stem the company's financial losses. Chrysler successfully streamlined their manufacturing and drastically reduced their debt from $50 million to $18 million. During this time, he also brought in the brilliant engineering trio of Zeter, Skelton, and Breer to begin secretly developing a new car. Remarkably, just months into his tenure at Willys, the bankers asked him to concurrently rescue another struggling automaker, the Maxwell Motor Company, offering him an additional $100,000 annually to lead its reorganization. But Walter Chrysler was no ordinary executive. He was a corporate surgeon with the capacity to operate on multiple patients at once. Crucially, this demanding role did not necessitate a full-time commitment, a clause that resonated deeply with Chrysler's desire to maintain his independence while commanding a substantial income. This irresistible proposition ultimately swayed him, and he formally accepted the position in late 1920, embarking on what would evolve into an arduous yet ultimately triumphant 4-year process of fundamental transformation. Upon stepping into Maxwell, Chrysler uncovered a litany of problems that were nothing short of comprehensive, deeply rooted, and pervasive throughout the organization. The product line was woefully outdated, its engineering fossilized in an era that had already passed, failing to keep pace with the rapid advancements and evolving consumer demands of the burgeoning automobile industry. Manufacturing operations were riddled with inefficiencies, leading to production costs that significantly outstripped those of competitors, even as the quality of Maxwell's vehicles remained notoriously inferior. The vital dealer network, the lifeblood of any automotive company, was thoroughly demoralized, having endured years of struggling to peddle cars plagued by persistent quality issues and a glaring lack of competitiveness against rivals' more appealing offerings. Most critically, the company's financial position was precarious, teetering on the brink. Debts massively exceeded assets, and severe working capital shortages had choked off any possibility of investing in desperately needed improvements, trapping Maxwell in a vicious cycle of decline. Chrysler's proposed reorganization plan was bold and uncompromising, designed to address the deep-seated malaise with surgical precision. It encompassed a multi-pronged approach, the decisive writing off of crippling bad debts, a crucial move to clean up the balance sheet, the audacious task of raising substantial new capital from a carefully selected group of investors willing to gamble on Maxwell's improbable revival, the ruthless elimination of all unprofitable operations, stemming the hemorrhaging of cash, and, most forward-looking, the focused redirection of remaining resources towards the ambitious development of a completely new, innovative car. This new vehicle, he envisioned, would not merely compete, but effectively challenge the established players in the lucrative mid-priced market. Such a radical plan, however, demanded immense patience and significant concessions. Creditors were compelled to accept substantially reduced payments, a bitter pill but preferable to total loss, and shareholders faced substantial dilution of their equity, a sacrifice deemed necessary for survival. Yet, for all its demanding requirements, Chrysler's meticulously crafted plan offered the only viable alternative to the grim certainty of liquidation. In 1922, as the reorganization efforts progressed, Chrysler orchestrated another strategic masterstroke: the acquisition of Chalmers Motor Company. While this move undoubtedly layered additional complexity onto an already intricate situation, it simultaneously unlocked crucial resources, additional manufacturing capacity, and, perhaps most invaluable, a cadre of top-tier engineering talent. Chalmers, much like Maxwell, was another failing manufacturer, albeit one that still possessed a respected brand name, despite its profound financial woes. Chrysler engineered a shrewd merger wherein Maxwell acquired Chalmers' assets, a package deal that included not only its factories and an expanded dealer network, but, critically, its highly regarded engineering department. This merger proved transformative, providing Maxwell with much-needed manufacturing capacity to house a trio of brilliant engineers he deeply trusted: Carl Breer, Fred Zeter, and Owen Skelton. Famously dubbed the Three Musketeers, they had collaborated effectively at Studebaker before Chrysler originally hired them at Willys-Overland. After leaving Willys, the trio formed an independent consulting firm. Chrysler smartly contracted their firm and relocated their entire staff into the newly acquired Chalmers plant in Detroit, forming the very core of his future engineering team. They brought with them a treasure trove of advanced engineering knowledge and practical experience, including pioneering work with smooth six-cylinder engines, the revolutionary concept of four-wheel brakes, and the innovative application of high-strength alloy materials, all cutting-edge technologies for the era. The bond between Chrysler and his Three Musketeers, Zeter, Skelton, and Breer, was unique in Detroit. Unlike Henry Ford, who often stifled his brightest minds, or William Durant, who was often too distracted to listen, Walter Chrysler treated his engineers as strategic partners. He provided the Three Musketeers with an autonomous skunkworks environment long before the term existed, allowing them to experiment with radical ideas that other firms deemed too expensive or too risky. This culture of mutual trust became the company's ultimate competitive advantage. Chrysler, with his keen eye for talent, immediately recognized their immense potential, empowering them with both the resources and the authority to design and develop a completely new car that would boldly integrate the very latest engineering advancements. This strategic investment in elite engineering talent and aggressive new product development was not merely beneficial. It was absolutely crucial to Chrysler's overarching strategy of forging a car capable of directly challenging and ultimately surpassing the offerings of established manufacturers. By late 1923, the gamble was complete. Chrysler had his car, his team, and his name. Now, he only needed a stage. And in January 1924, at the Grand Central Palace in New York, the industry was about to learn that knowledge, when deployed with courage, could change the world forever. The genesis of what would ultimately become the groundbreaking Chrysler automobile commenced in earnest in 1922. Walter Chrysler personally directed Breer, Zeter, and Skelton to embark on a mission to conceptualize and design a vehicle that would push the boundaries of advanced engineering while remaining firmly positioned within the accessible mid-priced market segment. The specifications laid down by Chrysler were nothing short of ambitious, challenging the prevailing industry norms of the day. He demanded a sophisticated six-cylinder engine at a time when the vast majority of mid-priced cars were still lumbering along with less powerful four-cylinder units. He insisted on the revolutionary safety feature of four-wheel hydraulic brakes, a stark contrast to most cars which still relied on antiquated mechanical brakes applied only to the rear wheels. Performance targets were equally aggressive: a top speed of 70 miles per hour, a blistering pace when most mid-priced competitors struggled to even reach 50 miles per hour, and finally, an attractive, modern styling that would captivate buyers seeking a harmonious blend of both thrilling performance and elegant appearance. The wealth of engineering innovations woven into the Chrysler's design stemmed from a powerful synergy. Part of this innovative edge derived directly from the deep well of knowledge and experience Chrysler had amassed during his transformative years at Buick and General Motors. The other, equally vital part came from the exceptional talents and collective ingenuity of the Three Musketeers. For instance, the high-compression engine, ingeniously incorporating aluminum alloy pistons, bore conceptual similarities to advanced designs Buick had been developing. However, the Chrysler team didn't merely copy. They significantly improved upon these concepts, enhancing both power output and critical reliability. The pioneering four-wheel hydraulic brake system, a marvel of safety engineering, was cleverly adapted from highly effective designs previously confined to the elite world of racing, then meticulously engineered for the robustness and cost efficiency required for reliable mass production. Furthermore, the car's chassis design represented a leap forward, incorporating a sophisticated understanding of weight distribution and suspension geometry, a combination that promised and delivered superior handling characteristics, leaving competitors struggling to keep pace. The decision to name the car Chrysler was not a marketing afterthought or a mere attempt to escape Maxwell's tarnished reputation. It was the resurrection of a dream that William Durant had nearly crushed years earlier. As early as 1920, while at Willys-Overland, Chrysler and his three Musketeers had already drafted the blueprints for a Chrysler 6. But when Willys hit financial ruin, Durant outbid Chrysler for the very plant where that dream was being built, effectively stealing the blueprints out from under him. Now, within the walls of the Chalmers plant, Chrysler finally had his revenge. By putting his name on the radiator, he was issuing a personal manifesto. It was an audacious gamble. The name Chrysler was synonymous with perfection at Buick and General Motors, and he was now staking that entire legacy on a single roll of the mechanical dice. Launching such an ambitious new car presented immense production challenges, particularly as it necessitated a delicate balancing act, converting Maxwell's existing factories to produce the technologically advanced Chrysler while simultaneously maintaining Maxwell's older production lines. The latter was crucial for generating ongoing cash flow, preventing the nascent enterprise from running dry during the transition. The manufacturing processes required for the Chrysler were, by their very nature, far more intricate and demanding than those for the simpler Maxwell vehicles. Its advanced engineering demanded significantly tighter tolerances and more sophisticated assembly procedures, requiring a complete overhaul of existing methods. Here, Chrysler's deep well of manufacturing knowledge, honed and perfected at Buick, proved indispensable. He meticulously applied this expertise to reconfigure production lines, ensuring they could efficiently build the new car to exacting quality standards. The substantial financing required for the Chrysler's launch was secured from a diversified portfolio of sources. This included the vital operating cash flow trickling in from Maxwell's continuing production, strategic loans from banks that, increasingly, saw the immense promise in the revolutionary new car, and crucial investments from discerning individuals who had been profoundly impressed by Chrysler's proven track record of turning around struggling companies. The total investment sunk into developing and launching the Chrysler ultimately surpassed $5 million, an astronomical sum for a company recently teetering on the brink of collapse to commit to a single new product. Yet, with his characteristic conviction and persuasive power, Chrysler managed to convince his backers that the car's advanced engineering and superior features would command premium pricing, and that the anticipated robust demand would more than justify their considerable investment. But as the first Chrysler 6 rolled off the assembly line, a shadow of controversy followed it. Had Walter Chrysler built a masterpiece, or had he simply reconstructed a stolen empire from memory? The technical knowledge Walter Chrysler so skillfully deployed in the creation of the inaugural Chrysler automobile, and subsequently in later models, represents the most direct and compelling application of proprietary information gleaned from his formative years within the hallowed halls of Buick and General Motors. Dissecting precisely what knowledge he transferred and, more critically, how he utilized it, illuminates the fascinating, often nebulous, gray area that lies between legitimately acquired competitive insight and the potential misappropriation of trade secrets. The high-compression six-cylinder engine that provided the thrilling power for the first Chrysler was a completely original masterpiece engineered by the Zeter-Skelton-Breer trio, pushing the boundaries of what was technologically possible. As its revered president, Buick's own six-cylinder engines had, in fact, been instrumental in cementing the division's formidable reputation for delivering exceptionally smooth, powerful, and reliable performance. It is imperative to note, however, that the Chrysler engine was not a mere facsimile. It incorporated distinct bore and stroke dimensions, innovative valve arrangements, and the groundbreaking use of aluminum alloy pistons, a feature that Buick engines, at that time, did not yet employ. Yet, the foundational architecture and a multitude of core design principles undeniably mirrored what Chrysler had directly overseen and championed at Buick. The complex question of whether this constituted an improper utilization of Buick's proprietary engineering remains a nuanced debate. Historically, broad engine designs themselves were not typically afforded patent protection expansive enough to preclude competitors from developing structurally similar configurations. While specific granular innovations, such as particular valve designs, intricate lubrication systems, or unique manufacturing processes, could indeed be rigorously protected by patents, the overarching approach to constructing a high-compression six-cylinder engine was, by and large, considered general industry knowledge, freely accessible to any engineer possessing the requisite expertise. Thus, Chrysler's highly skilled engineers could, and did, legitimately design an engine that leveraged similar underlying principles without infringing upon Buick's specific intellectual property rights. Beyond engine design, the manufacturing processes meticulously implemented by Chrysler within Maxwell's revitalized factories to produce the cutting-edge new car were direct reflections of the methods he had developed, refined, and perfected during his tenure at Buick. This encompassed everything from the pioneering progressive assembly techniques to the stringent parts inspection procedures, the sophisticated supplier management systems, and the rigorous quality control protocols. All these mirrored the highly successful operational blueprints Chrysler had established at Buick. It is crucial to understand that these manufacturing methodologies, while highly effective, were not considered secret. Indeed, similar approaches were widely adopted across the automotive industry, having been first pioneered by the visionary Henry Ford and subsequently embraced by numerous other manufacturers. However, Chrysler's particular implementations, his unique refinements, and his intuitive understanding of how to optimize these systems represented a distinct and immensely valuable body of knowledge gained directly from his specific, hands-on Buick experience. One particular area where genuine intellectual property concerns might have potentially arisen involved the specialized aluminum alloy formulation utilized for the Chrysler engine's cylinder construction. Buick, a leading innovator, had indeed extensively experimented with various aluminum alloys for different engine components, and some of these specific alloy compositions were, in fact, protected by patents. The aluminum alloy deployed in the Chrysler engines was developed collaboratively by the ingenious Three Musketeers and their expert metallurgical consultants. While they undoubtedly possessed an awareness of Buick's prior work in this domain and may well have used it as an intellectual springboard, careful development was key. If, hypothetically, the Chrysler alloy had directly infringed upon existing Buick patents, General Motors would have had a legitimate basis to pursue legal action for patent infringement. Interestingly, the revolutionary four-wheel hydraulic brake system, a feature that Chrysler courageously pioneered in mass-produced automobiles, did not stem from any direct knowledge transfer from General Motors. Instead, this advanced component was developed by Lockheed and subsequently licensed to Chrysler. At the time, in the early 1920s, General Motors itself was not yet incorporating hydraulic brakes into its vehicles. However, Chrysler's profound understanding of the paramount importance of superior braking performance, not just for safety but as a key differentiator, and his decisive willingness to adopt such advanced technology well ahead of his competitors, was a direct reflection of lessons learned at Buick. There, he had observed firsthand how truly superior engineering could powerfully differentiate a product in a crowded market and, crucially, justify a premium price point. The supplier base painstakingly cultivated by Chrysler for the new Chrysler automobile included a significant number of companies that also served various General Motors divisions. Leveraging his extensive network, Chrysler personally contacted suppliers he had previously collaborated with at Buick, skillfully activated the relationships he had diligently built over the years, and in some instances, negotiated supply contracts that remarkably paralleled the favorable terms he knew General Motors was securing. This supplier knowledge, the intimate understanding of which companies were reliably capable, what their specific strengths and weaknesses were, and what constituted reasonable pricing, represented an immensely valuable informational asset that Chrysler had acquired through his employment at General Motors. The ethical appropriateness of utilizing this deeply internalized supplier knowledge is open to distinct interpretations. From one pragmatic viewpoint, suppliers are independent businesses that are free to transact with any client offering acceptable terms, and Chrysler's informed judgment merely made him a more astute and efficient customer. From an alternative, more critical perspective, it could be argued that Chrysler was leveraging proprietary relationships and sensitive information gained purely through his privileged position at General Motors to directly benefit a competing enterprise, thereby potentially transgressing implicit obligations of confidentiality owed to his former employer. The intricate pricing strategy conceived for the Chrysler automobile revealed a highly sophisticated understanding of the complex automobile market structure and a precise grasp of competitors' cost positions. The touring car model of the Chrysler was strategically priced at $1,565. This placed it definitively above the more affordable offerings from Chevrolet and Ford, yet comfortably below the price points of Buick and other established six-cylinder cars. This shrewd positioning allowed the Chrysler to effectively capture a lucrative segment of buyers who earnestly desired superior performance to what Chevrolet could offer, but whose budgets could not stretch to afford a Buick. The success of this strategy hinged entirely on Chrysler's ability to accurately estimate his competitors' costs and pricing flexibility, a critical piece of inside knowledge he had undoubtedly accumulated during his executive tenure at General Motors. The development of the dealer network was another area where Chrysler's General Motors experience shone brightly. It involved the strategic recruitment of dealers, many of whom simultaneously carried products from General Motors or Ford. From his Buick days, Chrysler possessed a nuanced understanding of dealer economics, the precise margins dealers required to remain profitable, the nature and extent of factory support they demanded, and, crucially, how to structure dealer contracts to align their commercial interests seamlessly with the manufacturer's overarching goals. This invaluable knowledge enabled him to craft dealer programs that were not only highly attractive, but also intensely competitive with those offered by the industry's long-established manufacturers. Despite Chrysler being a nascent, unproven brand, the advertising and marketing approaches it deployed were meticulously designed to emphasize engineering excellence and advanced features. The messaging prominently highlighted the innovative six-cylinder engine, the superior four-wheel brakes, the impressive top speed, and the overall quality of construction. This highly effective marketing strategy was a direct reflection of profound lessons learned at Buick, specifically regarding how to position a car as offering superior value through demonstrably superior engineering. The advertising copy itself, with its keen emphasis on specific technical features and tangible benefits, bore a striking resemblance to approaches Buick had successfully utilized, skillfully adapted here to differentiate the Chrysler from both lower-priced utilitarian vehicles and higher-priced luxury competitors. The financial management systems implemented by Chrysler at his newly formed company were robust and sophisticated, incorporating state-of-the-art cost accounting methods, rigorous inventory control procedures, and prudent cash management practices. These, too, were refined techniques he had learned and mastered during his impactful tenures at Buick and General Motors. While these were not secret methods, they represented standard business practices widely employed across various industries. Chrysler's unique and specific knowledge lay in his expert ability to adapt them perfectly to the intricacies of automobile manufacturing. He instinctively knew which precise metrics to track, how to interpret complex financial information, and how to effectively leverage that data to proactively manage operations. This operational foresight stemmed directly from his unparalleled experience inside some of the industry's most efficiently managed companies. The legal risks Chrysler potentially faced from his utilization of General Motors' proprietary information were, in reality, quite limited, largely owing to the intrinsic nature of the knowledge he carried. The overwhelming majority of what he possessed was general industry knowledge, best practices, broad trends, and operational efficiencies, which, by definition, could not be legally protected as specific trade secrets. Any truly protectable, highly specific technical information, such as detailed engineering drawings, confidential supplier contracts, or precise cost data, he had not physically taken with him. What Walter Chrysler carried instead was an invaluable repository of deeply internalized knowledge within his own mind, an almost intuitive understanding of how successful automobile companies operated, a legal and undeniable asset that was entirely his to employ. The ethical questions surrounding Chrysler's use of this deeply acquired knowledge, however, presented a far more intricate and morally ambiguous landscape than the strictly legal considerations. He had, after all, been entrusted with privileged access to General Motors' confidential information. He had been compensated exceptionally well for his transformative work at General Motors, and his departure from the corporate giant had been entirely voluntary, motivated by a desire to pursue new, grander opportunities. From one perspective, utilizing knowledge gained at General Motors to directly compete against his former employer could reasonably be construed as an act of disloyalty or as a breach of implicit obligations of confidentiality that are often understood in high-level corporate roles. Yet, from an equally valid and pragmatic perspective, professionals across all industries routinely leverage the cumulative knowledge and experience gained at previous employers in their new positions. To prevent such a fundamental aspect of professional development would typically necessitate the existence of explicit non-compete agreements, legally binding clauses that Walter Chrysler, crucially, had never signed. The giants of Detroit watched, but they did not act. They saw a small manufacturer, but they failed to see the Trojan horse in their midst. Walter Chrysler had not just built a car, he had built a bridge between the craftsmanship of the past and the industrial empire of the future. The student had become the master, and the American road would never be the same again. The public unveiling of the Chrysler automobile at the prestigious January 1924 New York Automobile Show was more than just a product launch. It represented the culmination of 3 arduous years of intense development and, simultaneously, the audacious declaration of Walter Chrysler's full-scale assault on the entrenched automobile market. A detailed examination of how this launch was meticulously executed and, more importantly, how it was received, vividly reveals both the genuine, inherent merits of the car itself and Chrysler's extraordinary mastery of marketing and publicity. His decision to introduce the vehicle at the New York show, rather than deferring to the often larger and arguably more important Chicago or Detroit shows, was a strategic stroke of genius, reflecting Chrysler's profound understanding of the dynamics of publicity and impeccable timing. The New York show, by virtue of its location in the nation's media capital, commanded an enormous volume of media attention, and it consistently attracted a discerning audience of wealthy buyers who possessed both the means and the desire to acquire new, innovative automobiles. A successful debut in New York, Chrysler shrewdly calculated, would generate a cascade of positive publicity, a powerful momentum that would carry through to subsequent shows and, critically, to dealer showrooms when the car finally became available for purchase. The display strategy itself was revolutionary, meticulously crafted to position the Chrysler not merely as another new car, but as an engineering achievement of the highest order. The elaborate exhibit featured dramatic cutaway displays that vividly showcased the engine's innovative aluminum pistons, the groundbreaking four-wheel brake system, and the sophisticated chassis construction. Detailed engineering diagrams and precise specifications were prominently displayed, transforming the exhibit into a technical masterclass. The entire presentation emphatically underscored that the Chrysler offered truly advanced technology at a price point where such sophistication had been previously entirely unavailable, democratizing high-end engineering. The press reception for the Chrysler automobile exceeded even the most optimistic projections, bordering on rapturous. Automotive journalists and industry observers who flocked to the show were universally captivated and profoundly impressed, not only by the Chrysler's ambitious specifications, but also by its stellar performance during spirited demonstration drives. The exquisite smoothness and potent power of the 6-cylinder engine, the exceptional stopping capability afforded by the four-wheel brakes, and the car's overall refinement drew widespread and enthusiastic praise. Articles splashed across the pages of leading automotive magazines and prominent newspapers hailed the Chrysler as perhaps the most significant new car introduction in years, a resounding testament to its impact. The performance claims boldly asserted by Chrysler were not mere marketing fluff. They were precise, quantifiable, and, critically, verifiable. The company confidently claimed a top speed of 70 miles per hour, a remarkable feat when most mid-priced cars typically struggled to reach 45 to 50 miles per hour. Furthermore, they promised acceleration and braking performance superior to anything else in its price class. These were not simply hyperbolic marketing boasts, but rather concrete specifications that could be rigorously tested and unequivocally verified. Chrysler's confidence was absolute. He knew the car would meet, and in many cases exceed, every single one of these ambitious claims. But engineering brilliance and critical acclaim were only half of the equation. The true genius of Walter Chrysler lay in his ability to turn technical specs into a financial juggernaut. The pricing announcement, set at $1,565 for the touring car model, was the culmination of meticulous calculation, designed with surgical precision to position the Chrysler competitively within the existing market landscape. This price point was approximately 50% higher than a basic Chevrolet, yet critically, it was about 30% less than a comparable Buick six-cylinder. Previously, buyers yearning for the smooth performance of a six-cylinder engine but unable to afford the premium price tag of a Buick had found their options severely limited. Chrysler ingeniously filled this void, offering Buick-level engineering and sophistication at a price point significantly closer to that of a Chevrolet, effectively creating and dominating a new, highly attractive market segment. The announced production timeline was equally ambitious. Chrysler indicated that cars would begin reaching dealers by June 1924, granting dealerships a precious 6 months to cultivate intense interest and secure initial orders. This aggressive schedule was fraught with logistical challenges, necessitating a rapid scale-up from prototype production to thousands of units monthly. However, Chrysler's confidence, deeply rooted in his extensive and successful experience at Buick, assured him that these monumental production challenges could be effectively managed, provided the manufacturing processes were organized with meticulous precision and unwavering discipline. Following the triumphant New York show, dealer recruitment accelerated dramatically, fueled by the compelling sight of the car itself and the torrent of overwhelmingly favorable press coverage. Dealers, many of whom were already selling products from other manufacturers like General Motors or Ford, immediately recognized the Chrysler as an unprecedented opportunity. It offered them a potent new weapon to capture buyers in a market segment where their existing offerings might have been less competitive or entirely absent. The dealer agreements proffered by Chrysler were generally aligned with industry standards, but strategically incorporated several terms more favorable to dealers. This deliberate concession reflected Chrysler's astute recognition that he needed to offer strong incentives to encourage dealers to enthusiastically promote and invest in an entirely unproven brand. The ambitious first-year production target was set at 25,000 units. While seemingly modest when compared to Ford's staggering annual production of over 1 million Model Ts or Chevrolet's hundreds of thousands, this target was nonetheless substantial and incredibly challenging for a brand-new manufacturer. Achieving it demanded a monumental effort, a rapid expansion of existing production capacity, the intensive training of a new workforce, the painstaking establishment of robust supplier relationships, and the meticulous building of inventory. The cumulative investment required for this expansion alone amounted to several $1 million, a sum over and above what had already been expended on the car's development. The financing for this crucial expansion materialized partly from the consistent operating cash flow generated by Maxwell, which continued to produce its own cars, and significantly from fresh investments powerfully attracted by the Chrysler's sensational debut. Banks that had initially approached Maxwell with extreme caution now became far more willing to extend credit, having witnessed the undeniable market response to the Chrysler. Individual investors who had previously bypassed earlier opportunities eagerly reconsidered their positions, swayed by the car's undeniable appeal and the glowing reviews. The manufacturing ramp-up itself mirrored the precise pattern Chrysler had so successfully orchestrated at Buick. Production commenced slowly and deliberately, characterized by intensive quality control measures and rigorous worker training. As processes were meticulously refined and the workforce gained proficiency, production rates gradually yet steadily increased. By the summer of 1924, the revitalized factories were efficiently producing several hundred Chrysler vehicles weekly. By year-end, this weekly output surged to over 1,000 units. Ultimately, the total first-year production reached an impressive 32,000 units, significantly exceeding the ambitious initial target. The market reception for the Chrysler car transcended even the most optimistic internal projections. Buyers who had the privilege of test driving the new vehicle were profoundly impressed by its superior performance and unwavering quality. The six-cylinder engine delivered precisely the promised power and unparalleled smoothness, transforming every drive into a refined experience. The The revolutionary four-wheel brakes provided a stopping capability that instilled a palpable sense of safety, making the car feel inherently more secure than its competitors. The styling, while attractive, was tastefully executed without being ostentatious or flashy, projecting an image of understated elegance. Crucially, the overall quality of construction was widely recognized as being on par with, or even superior to, cars costing significantly more. These robust sales results quickly translated into remarkable financial success for the nascent company. The average transaction price, hovering around $1,650 across the diverse model range, after deducting a dealer margin of roughly $250, left the factory with a healthy revenue of $1,400 per car. With estimated production costs ranging from $1,000 to $1,100 per car, this yielded a substantial gross margin of approximately $300 to $400 per unit. Multiplying this by the 32,000 units sold in the first year generated a gross profit of a staggering $10 to $12 million. This phenomenal financial performance not only comfortably covered the considerable development costs, but also rapidly began generating impressive returns for the eager investors. The competitive response from industry titans like General Motors and other established manufacturers was, surprisingly, muted and limited initially. They simply failed to immediately recognize the profound and disruptive threat that the Chrysler represented. The Chrysler's first-year production of 32,000 units, while a triumph for a new entrant, was indeed tiny when juxtaposed with Chevrolet's colossal production of over 400,000 units, or Buick's impressive 150,000-plus vehicles. The established manufacturers, complacent in their dominance, could afford the luxury of a wait-and-see approach, perhaps viewing the Chrysler as a mere flash of initial success that would inevitably fade into obscurity rather than a sustainable, formidable competitor. The 1924 Chrysler 6 had proven that Walter could build a masterpiece, but in the brutal math of the automotive world, quality alone wasn't enough to survive. You needed volume. To challenge the kings, Chrysler had to venture into the territory of the common man. Walter Chrysler's astute decision to inaugurate the Plymouth brand in 1928, specifically conceived to engage in direct, head-to-head competition with Ford and Chevrolet in the high-volume, low-priced market segment, eloquently demonstrated his profound strategic understanding of the intricate automobile industry structure. It also underscored his unwavering ambition to challenge both General Motors and Ford across the entire spectrum of the market. Delving into the meticulous development and highly successful launch of Plymouth provides invaluable insights into Chrysler's masterful application of knowledge. This expertise was derived from his keen observations of both Ford's pioneering mass-market production approach and General Motors' sophisticated multi-brand segmentation strategy. The strategic rationale underpinning the creation of Plymouth was crystal clear. Chrysler Corporation, despite its burgeoning success, desperately needed a robust presence in the high-volume, low-price segment, a territory decisively dominated by the formidable duo of Ford and Chevrolet. While the flagship Chrysler brand was flourishing in the aspirational mid-price segment, and the timely acquisition of Dodge in 1928 had added another potent, well-established mid-price brand to the portfolio. Neither truly competed in the crucial sub-$1,000 segment, where the vast majority of cars were sold. Without a compelling low-priced offering, Chrysler Corporation faced a critical strategic void. It could neither capture vital entry-level buyers, nor could it offer existing Chrysler and Dodge owners a viable trade-down option should their financial circumstances unexpectedly change. Chrysler meticulously considered several alternative approaches for tackling this strategic imperative. These included the option of expanding the Chrysler brand down-market with lower-priced models, resurrecting the Maxwell name, which the company still owned, or venturing to create an entirely new brand from scratch. Extending the prestigious Chrysler brand down into the lower price points carried a significant and unacceptable risk. It could dilute the brand's hard-won reputation for advanced engineering and premium quality. The Maxwell name, despite its historical recognition, was irrevocably burdened by the deeply negative associations stemming from the company's recent and very public struggles in the early 1920s. Creating an entirely new brand, while demanding the arduous task of building awareness from the ground up, offered the invaluable advantage of starting fresh, unencumbered by any historical baggage. The name Plymouth was ultimately chosen with deliberate intent. specifically selected to evoke a powerful sense of American heritage, reliability, and stability. Plymouth Rock, a potent symbol, represented the very foundation of European settlement in America, thereby suggesting solidity, enduring tradition, and rootedness, qualities that resonated deeply with the target demographic. The name itself was also short, inherently easy to remember and pronounce, and crucially, was not being utilized by any competitors. This shrewd choice of branding profoundly reflected Chrysler's sophisticated understanding of branding principles, lessons he had keenly observed during his time at General Motors, where brand names like Chevrolet, Buick, and Cadillac were each distinctive, memorable, and strategically differentiated. The engineering challenge presented by Plymouth was formidable. To develop a car that could be manufactured and sold profitably at the fiercely competitive price levels dictated by Ford and Chevrolet, all while steadfastly delivering competitive performance and unwavering quality. The cost constraints were, by any measure, severe. If the car retailed for, say, $670, and dealers required a reasonable margin of approximately $100, the factory's net revenue would be a mere $570. To achieve even a modest profit margin, manufacturing and overhead costs had to be rigorously contained below $450. This meant that every single component had to be meticulously engineered for maximum economy without the slightest compromise on reliability or essential quality. The ingenious solution lay in a strategy of intelligent design and component commonality, developing a car that shared a significant number of its components with existing Chrysler and Dodge products. This judicious approach leveraged crucial economies of scale through common parts, thereby driving down unit costs, while simultaneously utilizing a smaller, less expensive four-cylinder engine and simpler trim and features appropriate for its price point. For instance, the Plymouth creatively employed the same robust body shells as the entry-level Dodge models, but with carefully differentiated styling details to give it a unique identity. The chassis borrowed heavily from proven Chrysler designs but judiciously utilized less expensive materials and simpler suspension components. The engine itself was a brand new four-cylinder design, engineered from the ground up but cleverly built using the very same efficient production equipment and manufacturing methods already developed and refined for Chrysler's successful six-cylinder engines. The manufacturing plan necessitated a significant expansion of production capacity, as existing plants were already fully utilized churning out Chrysler and Dodge vehicles. The pragmatic decision was made to initially build Plymouths within the existing Highland Park plant, the former Maxwell facility, rapidly transitioning older production lines before investing in an entirely new 1,000-car-a-day dedicated Plymouth factory. This shrewd decision not only conserved precious capital investment but also dramatically accelerated the timeline for getting the Plymouth into full-scale production. However, it also introduced a new layer of complexity, demanding extremely careful management of production scheduling to meticulously avoid conflicts between Dodge and Plymouth production lines. The strategic development of the dealer network for Plymouth was equally ingenious. Rather than embarking on the costly and time-consuming endeavor of creating an entirely separate Plymouth dealer organization, the strategy was to sell the new brand through existing Chrysler and Dodge dealers. This decision powerfully reflected Chrysler's deep understanding, again drawn from his formative General Motors experience, that establishing new dealer networks was an incredibly expensive and protracted process. By leveraging existing dealers, Plymouth could penetrate the market rapidly, capitalizing on pre-established dealer relationships and existing facilities. This approach also offered a compelling benefit to the dealers themselves. They could now present customers with a comprehensive and integrated range of Chrysler Corporation products, spanning the entire market from the entry-level Plymouth through the robust Dodge, all the way up to the sophisticated flagship Chrysler. The pricing strategy for Plymouth was another masterclass in market segmentation. The base model was introduced at $670, a price point strategically positioned slightly below Chevrolet's $695, but positioned to compete directly with Ford's newly introduced Model A. This pricing reflected a pragmatic reality. Plymouth, with its comparatively smaller production volumes, simply could not match Ford's incredibly low production costs. However, it could confidently offer a compelling value proposition by providing significantly more features and demonstrably better performance than the Spartan Model T. The overarching strategy was clear: to capture that crucial segment of buyers who desire more refined features than the entry-level Ford offered, but whose budgets could not stretch to afford Chevrolet's higher price. The official introduction of the Plymouth at the 1928 New York Automobile Show generated substantial public interest and media buzz. Buyers immediately recognized that this new car offered the legendary Chrysler engineering quality at an exceptionally accessible price point. The Plymouth boasted a robust four-cylinder engine producing a healthy 45 horsepower, a significant leap over the Model T's meager 20 horsepower, though naturally less than Chevrolet's six-cylinder offering. Crucially, it featured modern hydraulic brakes, offered comfortable seating, and presented an undeniably attractive styling. In essence, the car looked and felt far more substantial and refined than the venerable Model T, while remarkably costing less than its Chevrolet rival. The first-year sales results dramatically exceeded all expectations, with over 52,000 Plymouths sold in 1928, despite the car being available for purchase only during the latter half of the model year. This rapid success solidified Plymouth's place as a formidable new contender and a critical pillar of Walter Chrysler's burgeoning automotive empire. This unparalleled success with Plymouth unequivocally validated Walter Chrysler's strategic gamble, that a competitive, well-engineered car offered at an accessible price point could carve out a significant share in the burgeoning low-price segment, then largely dominated by Ford and Chevrolet. It was a potent demonstration that Chrysler Corporation possessed the acumen not only to successfully launch entirely new brands, but also to effectively penetrate and conquer new market segments. The astonishing sales figures for Plymouth, when combined with the robust performance of Chrysler and Dodge models, rapidly propelled Chrysler Corporation into the pantheon of American automotive giants, securing its position as the third-largest manufacturer, directly behind the long-established powerhouses of General Motors and Ford. The reverberations of Plymouth's meteoric rise were felt throughout the industry, triggering substantial competitive responses from its two behemoth rivals. Ford, which had reigned supreme in the low-price market for nearly 2 decades with the iconic Model T, was directly confronted with the stark reality of its flagship's obsolescence. Plymouth's modern design, comfort features, and advanced engineering, particularly its hydraulic four-wheel brakes, served as a crucial catalyst, convincing Henry Ford and his top brass that the Model T, despite its historical significance, had become a relic. This realization culminated in Ford's monumental announcement in late 1927 of the Model A, marking a decisive, albeit belated, abandonment of the Model T and ushering in a new era with a thoroughly modern car boasting contemporary styling, enhanced comfort features, and, crucially, four-wheel mechanical brakes. Meanwhile, Chevrolet, General Motors' primary weapon against Ford and now a formidable Plymouth, responded by leveraging its well-regarded six-cylinder engine advantage. It doubled down on innovative marketing, introducing new models, and continually updating its styling to maintain its competitive edge and prevent further erosion of its market share. For Chrysler Corporation, the financial impact of Plymouth's integration was nothing short of dramatic. The substantial addition of Plymouth's sales volume and surging profits to the already strong results of Chrysler and Dodge pushed the corporation's annual vehicle sales past the impressive 300,000 units mark and revenues soaring beyond $200 million. This rapid expansion firmly established Chrysler as the third-largest automobile manufacturer, a coveted position it would steadfastly maintain for many decades. The incredible transformation of Chrysler Corporation from a nascent, single-brand manufacturer in 1924 to a diversified, multi-brand automotive empire, by 1930 stood as the ultimate testament to Walter Chrysler's prescient strategic vision and his masterly application of the knowledge he had assiduously gained from observing General Motors' highly successful multi-brand, multi-price strategy from within. But building a new brand from scratch was only one side of Chrysler's pincer movement. To truly sit at the high table of Detroit, he needed more than a new car. He needed a sudden, massive expansion of scale. The story of how this rapid consolidation occurred not only highlights Chrysler's extraordinary business acumen, but also reveals his unparalleled ability to execute complex acquisitions and integrate them organizationally, all while maintaining a relentless focus on competitive advantage. The acquisition of Dodge Brothers in 1928 valued at an astonishing $170 million, represented one of the largest industrial acquisitions undertaken up to that point in American history. This singular move instantly and dramatically transformed Chrysler Corporation's scale, market presence, and competitive standing. At the time, Dodge was a titan in its own right, ranking as the fourth largest automobile manufacturer in America, consistently producing approximately 150,000 vehicles annually and generating sales exceeding $100 million. The acquisition more than doubled Chrysler Corporation's existing production capacity, immediately granting it a powerful, established brand with an extensive, loyal dealer network and a deeply committed customer base. The strategic rationale underpinning the Dodge acquisition was multifaceted and exceptionally astute. It aimed to immediately gain significant production capacity and an expansive dealer network crucial for supporting Chrysler's ambitious growth trajectory. It brought in a wealth of engineering talent and manufacturing expertise from a respected competitor. Crucially, it eliminated a direct competitor in the crucial mid-price segment, where both Chrysler and Dodge models vied for market share. Ultimately, it was designed to forge a diversified multi-brand portfolio akin to General Motors, offering multiple price points and distinct brand identities to cater to a broader spectrum of consumers. This audacious acquisition instantaneously elevated Chrysler Corporation from being a single-brand challenger to a formidable diversified manufacturer with a product lineup spanning from the economically priced Plymouth, starting around $670, all the way up to the luxurious Chrysler Imperial, which commanded prices of $3,000 or more. Financing the Dodge acquisition, which required assembling $170 million, an enormous sum in the financial landscape of 1928, was a testament to sophisticated financial engineering. Instead of raising massive cash through new bank loans or bonds, Chrysler executed a brilliant cashless transaction. He purchased Dodge entirely by issuing $170 million in new Chrysler stock to Dodge's owners, the banking firm Dillon Read & Company, while simply assuming Dodge's existing outstanding bond debts of nearly $59 million. The intricate structuring of this stock swap deal drew heavily on the invaluable knowledge Walter Chrysler had gleaned from closely observing William Durant's expansion tactics at General Motors and from his collaborations with shrewd investment bankers who had extensive experience in financing consolidation within the rapidly evolving automobile industry. The subsequent integration of Dodge into Chrysler Corporation's operations was managed with meticulous care, prioritizing the preservation of Dodge's distinct brand identity and its valuable dealer relationships, while simultaneously striving to achieve crucial operational efficiencies through the judicious sharing of components and manufacturing processes. Dodge continued to operate with a significant degree of semi-independence, maintaining its own dedicated engineering, manufacturing, and marketing organizations, yet with an increasingly coordinated approach with Chrysler operations concerning purchasing, parts sharing, and manufacturing methods. The successful launch of Plymouth in 1928, remarkably in the very same year as the monumental Dodge acquisition, powerfully demonstrated Chrysler's extraordinary ability to execute multiple major strategic initiatives concurrently. While fully immersed in the complex task of integrating an entire automotive giant like Dodge, Chrysler Corporation was simultaneously developing and launching an entirely new brand, specifically targeting the industry's highest volume segment. This parallel execution demanded an organizational depth and management capability that profoundly reflected Walter Chrysler's years of invaluable experience managing complex, large-scale operations during his tenure at Buick and General Motors. The sophisticated organizational structure that emerged within Chrysler Corporation by 1930 bore a striking resemblance to General Motors' renowned divisional organization. Each brand operated with a considerable degree of semi-autonomy, yet critical corporate-level coordination ensured cohesion across finance, purchasing, engineering standards, and manufacturing efficiency. This structure was directly modeled on General Motors' successful approach, which Chrysler had observed firsthand from the inside and which he astutely recognized as inherently superior to Ford's more rigidly centralized organization. The conscious adoption of General Motors' organizational model underscored Walter Chrysler's pragmatic willingness to learn from and even replicate the proven best practices of successful competitors. By 1930, the company's total production volume had surged past 300,000 vehicles annually, encompassing the full spectrum of its brands. Plymouth, Dodge, Chrysler, and Imperial. This formidable volume firmly entrenched Chrysler Corporation in third place, trailing behind General Motors' approximately 1.5 million vehicles and Ford's roughly 1.2 million vehicles, but comfortably positioned well ahead of all smaller, independent manufacturers. This impressive volume generated substantial economies of scale in purchasing, manufacturing, and distribution, empowering Chrysler Corporation to compete highly effectively on cost, while simultaneously allowing for significant investments in cutting-edge engineering and uncompromising quality. By 1930, Chrysler's dealer network had expanded to several thousand dealers nationwide, all proudly selling Chrysler Corporation products. This gave the company a distribution reach comparable to Ford's vast network and rapidly approaching General Motors' even more extensive presence. A strategic innovation was that many dealers carried multiple Chrysler Corporation brands, allowing them to offer customers a comprehensive range of choices under one roof while maintaining an exclusive focus on Chrysler's diverse product lines. This intelligent dealer structure provided broad market coverage while simultaneously reducing the total number of dealer relationships the corporation had to directly manage, streamlining operations and maximizing efficiency. The engineering organization Chrysler meticulously built was a testament to his commitment to excellence, recruiting top talent, including the legendary 3 Musketeers from Chalmers, other seasoned engineers from rival manufacturers, and brilliant graduates from leading engineering schools. This intellectual powerhouse created capabilities that robustly rivaled those of General Motors and Ford. A central engineering organization developed advanced technologies that were systematically deployed across all brands, while dedicated divisional engineers adapted these groundbreaking designs for specific models. This strategic combination of central innovation and divisional application struck a perfect balance between achieving organizational efficiency and maintaining crucial market responsiveness. Even as the ominous shadow of the Great Depression began to affect automobile sales, Chrysler Corporation's financial performance by 1930 remained remarkably strong, generating revenues exceeding $300 million annually and profits ranging between $20 and $30 million. This sustained profitability reflected both the profound operational efficiency gained from applying the advanced manufacturing knowledge Walter Chrysler had meticulously developed at Buick and the inherent pricing power that stemmed from offering highly differentiated products distinguished by advanced engineering. A comparison to Ford Motor Company's well-documented troubles in the late 1920s vividly highlighted the intrinsic advantages of Chrysler Corporation's multi-brand strategy. Ford had stubbornly clung to the Model T for far too long, finally introducing the Model A in 1927, but then struggling severely with the challenging and costly transition to modern manufacturing. Ford's single-brand focus made the company acutely vulnerable. Any product failures or adverse market shifts could potentially devastate the entire corporation. In stark contrast, Chrysler Corporation's diversified portfolio approach provided an invaluable layer of stability through strategic diversification. If one brand encountered difficulties, others could effectively compensate, cushioning the overall impact. While the Great Depression of 1929 decimated the ranks of independent automakers and forced giants like Ford and General Motors into drastic retreats, Chrysler Corporation became a statistical miracle. By maintaining a lean operation and refusing to halt innovation, the company actually increased its market share during the 1930s. It was the only member of the Big Three to remain consistently profitable throughout the darkest years of the decade, proving that a company built on efficient engineering could survive even when the global economy was collapsing. In 1934, continuing its relentless pursuit of innovation despite the challenging economic climate, the company introduced a technological marvel that embodied the absolute peak of the 3 Musketeers' engineering prowess, the Chrysler Airflow. Spearheaded by Carl Breer's pioneering wind tunnel studies, the Airflow featured a radical, streamlined aerodynamic design, unibody construction, and a novel seating arrangement that placed passengers between the axles for a revolutionary floating ride. Although it was hailed as the fastest closed stock car in America at the time, the Airflow ultimately proved to be a commercial failure. Its futuristic aesthetic was simply too radical for the conservative public of the 1930s, and its initial launch was marred by production delays and early quality issues. Nevertheless, this moonshot vehicle was decades ahead of its time. The Airflow's streamlined principles and structural innovations eventually became the standard across the entire global automotive industry, cementing its legacy as a true design icon. The airflow might have been a commercial gamble that didn't pay off, but the organizational machine behind it was flawless, a direct result of the hard lessons Chrysler learned from the chaos of his past. The very relationship between Walter Chrysler and his senior management team deeply reflected the critical lessons he had learned from his contentious conflicts with William C. Durant at General Motors. Chrysler was a firm believer in delegating substantial authority to his division managers and functional executives, consciously avoiding the stifling centralized control that had created so many problems at both Durant's General Motors and Henry Ford's organization. However, Chrysler always maintained ultimate authority over overarching strategy and major decisions, ensuring essential coordination while simultaneously empowering his subordinates to innovate and lead. The corporate culture that rapidly developed at Chrysler Corporation was one that emphatically emphasized engineering excellence, manufacturing efficiency, and unwavering market responsiveness. These core values were a direct reflection of Walter Chrysler's personal priorities and his formative experiences at Buick and General Motors. This vibrant culture successfully attracted exceptionally talented engineers and managers who were eager to work in an organization that genuinely valued technical expertise and operational excellence. Moreover, this distinct culture helped forge an identity sharply differentiated from General Motors's and Ford's, allowing Chrysler Corporation to establish its own unique character rather than being perceived as merely an imitator. The robust manufacturing foundation and culture of execution that Walter Chrysler built proved its ultimate worth when the United States entered World War II. Following Chrysler's transition of daily operations to his trusted successor, Kaufman Thuma Keller, the corporation was perfectly positioned to answer the nation's call. Civilian car production was completely halted in 1942, as the company rapidly converted its massive facilities for the defense effort. Chrysler Corporation played a tremendous role, producing over 22,000 tanks, more than 400,000 trucks, and 18,000 B-29 aircraft engines, anti-aircraft radar systems, and even container plating vital to the Manhattan Project. This monumental wartime output, where plants went from blueprints to producing tanks in just 7 months, stood as the ultimate tribute to the company's engineering excellence that Walter Chrysler had instilled. The legacy of knowledge transfer from General Motors and Buick to Chrysler Corporation was truly comprehensive and foundational. The organizational structure, the refined manufacturing methods, the innovative engineering approaches, the sophisticated supplier management strategies, the cultivated dealer relationships, and the stringent financial controls all bore the unmistakable influence of what Walter Chrysler had learned during his tenure inside the industry's then largest corporation. Chrysler Corporation was, in essence, built on a robust foundation of operational and strategic knowledge that Walter Chrysler had painstakingly acquired through his pivotal years at Buick and General Motors, knowledge he then masterfully applied to create an incredibly formidable competitor. Walter Chrysler's extraordinary creation of an automobile empire between 1920 and 1930, achieved through the systematic application of knowledge gained inside Buick and General Motors, represents a truly remarkable case of competitive knowledge transfer that fundamentally transformed the American automobile industry. From a precarious standing start as a struggling, failing manufacturer, Chrysler Corporation ascended to become the third largest automobile company in America within a mere 6 years, and would eventually, decades later, even surpass Ford. This astonishing trajectory powerfully demonstrated that insider knowledge, when combined with exceptional execution capability, could effectively challenge and even overcome the advantages of even the most dominant, long-established competitors. Crucially, the knowledge Chrysler transferred was not trade secrets in any legal or illicit sense. He did not steal documents or violate any contractual obligations. Instead, he applied a deep, general understanding of how successful automobile companies operated, knowledge he had legitimately acquired through his lawful employment and that he was legally and ethically entitled to use. The manufacturing techniques, the organizational structures, the supplier relationships, the dealer management approaches, and the strategic frameworks he deployed all represented a body of general professional knowledge that was his to leverage in creating a competing enterprise. The ethical dimensions of this knowledge transfer, however, remain a subject of debate. Chrysler had been entrusted with access to confidential operational information and had been compensated extremely well for his work at General Motors. Using that specific knowledge to directly compete against his former employer might be perceived by some as violating implicit obligations of loyalty and confidentiality. Yet, it is also true that professionals routinely utilize general knowledge and expertise gained at previous employers in new positions and ventures. Preventing this would necessitate the widespread enforcement of non-compete agreements that could severely restrict workers' mobility and career opportunities. Regardless of the ethical nuances, the competitive impact of Chrysler's entry was profound and overwhelmingly positive for the industry. Chrysler Corporation's vibrant entry into the automobile industry dramatically increased competition, spurred relentless innovation, and provided consumers with additional, compelling choices. The engineering advances Chrysler pioneered, including revolutionary four-wheel hydraulic brakes, advanced high-compression engines, and sophisticated suspension systems, were eventually adopted throughout the industry, ultimately benefiting all automobile buyers. The intense competitive pressure Chrysler created forced both Ford and General Motors to continually improve their products and to be significantly more responsive to evolving market demands. The organizational innovations Chrysler implemented, including the highly effective multi-brand strategy, the divisional organization structure, and the strategic combination of central coordination with divisional autonomy, became standard approaches not only in the automobile industry, but also in large corporations generally across various sectors. These organizational forms proved incredibly effective at managing vast complexity while maintaining agility and responsiveness, unequivocally validating the operational model Chrysler had observed at General Motors and masterfully adapted for his own company. The personal success Walter Chrysler achieved was extraordinary by any measure. He accumulated substantial wealth through his generous General Motors salary and bonuses, and then exponentially multiplied that wealth by meticulously building Chrysler Corporation from the ground up. He swiftly became one of America's most prominent business leaders, respected equally for his profound engineering knowledge and his formidable management capability. Walter Chrysler started as an apprentice with a 5-cent half-round file, and he ended by rewriting the rules of the American road. He proved that while buildings can be bought and blueprints can be lost, the true engine of progress is the knowledge carried within a man's mind. And in the quiet halls of history, his legacy still accelerates. But Walter Chrysler's ambition could not be contained within the walls of a factory. As his machines conquered the American roads, he turned his eyes upward, ready to etch his name into the very clouds of Manhattan. While Chrysler Corporation surged in Detroit, Walter Chrysler was simultaneously cementing his personal legacy in the New York skyline. Financed entirely from his personal fortune as a real estate investment for his sons, the Chrysler Building became the stage for a fierce race into the sky. Chrysler and his architect, William Van Allen, were locked in a bitter rivalry with H. Craig Severance, who was constructing the 40 Wall Street building. When Severance pushed his building to 927 feet to claim the title of the world's tallest, Van Allen executed a brilliant, secret countermove. He had a 185-foot, 27-ton steel spire secretly constructed inside the Chrysler Building's frame. In October 1929, the spire was hoisted and riveted into place in just 90 minutes, bringing the tower to 1,046 feet and successfully surpassing both 40 Wall Street and the Eiffel Tower. This Art Deco masterpiece was a literal monument to the automobile, featuring Narosta stainless steel, 31st floor setbacks adorned with giant replicas of 1929 Chrysler radiator caps, and 61st floor gargoyles modeled after Chrysler eagle hood ornaments. Near its peak lay the exclusive Cloud Club, Chrysler's private 2-story apartment, and a public observatory, where the legendary industrialist proudly displayed his original handmade mechanic's toolbox. But beyond the cold steel of the skyscrapers and the roaring engines of Detroit, Walter's heart remained anchored to a promise made in a small Kansas town decades earlier. While Walter Chrysler's professional life was defined by factories and boardrooms, his personal foundation was his family. In 1901, he married his childhood sweetheart, Della Viola Forker, who unfailingly supported his restless ambition from his days as a railroad mechanic. Together, they had 4 children, Thelma, Bernice, Walter Jr., and John, Jack. As his wealth exponentially grew, the family settled into a lavish 12-acre waterfront estate at Kings Point on Long Island, which Della decorated with European art and furniture. In fact, the Chrysler Building itself was conceived not just as a corporate monument, but as a personal real estate investment for his sons, who showed little interest in joining the automobile industry. Chrysler stepped down as president of the corporation in 1935, handing the operational reins to his trusted protege, Kaufman Thuma Keller, though he remained chairman of the board. Tragically, his twilight years were marked by failing health and heartbreak. In May 1938, the 63-year-old industrialist suffered a debilitating stroke at his estate. Just over 2 months later, his beloved wife Della died of a cerebral hemorrhage. Devastated by her loss, Chrysler's health steadily deteriorated over the next 2 years. He passed away from a cerebral hemorrhage on August 18, 1940, and was laid to rest alongside Della in the family mausoleum at Sleepy Hollow Cemetery in New York, while Walter Chrysler left behind a monumental industrial and architectural legacy. His eldest son, Walter Percy Chrysler Jr., established a profound cultural one. Showing little interest in the automobile business, Walter Jr. utilized his wealth to pursue a lifelong passion for art that had begun when he was just 14 years old. Over the decades, he became one of America's preeminent art collectors, amassing an extraordinary collection of over 10,000 objects. His acquisitions ranged from avant-garde modern paintings by masters like Picasso and Matisse to extensive holdings of Tiffany glass. In 1971, he gifted this massive, priceless collection to the city of Norfolk, Virginia. This generous donation transformed a local gallery into the internationally renowned Chrysler Museum of Art, ensuring that the Chrysler family name would be immortalized in the world of fine arts, just as it was in the automotive industry. The lingering question of whether the automobile industry ultimately benefited from Chrysler's competitive entry or whether it represented a harmful misappropriation of General Motors' proprietary knowledge largely depends on one's perspective. From one viewpoint, the increased competition undeniably drove innovation and arguably made the industry more efficient and responsive to consumer needs. From another, General Motors had heavily invested in developing the very knowledge and organizational approaches that Chrysler deployed, and arguably deserved some protection from having their senior executives use that meticulously developed knowledge to create direct competitors. The legal framework that permitted Chrysler's knowledge transfer reflected the era's distinctly different approach to employment relationships and intellectual property. Non-compete agreements were far less common and considerably less enforceable than they would later become. Trade secret protection was limited, and the courts generally recognized that professionals could legitimately use general knowledge gained through employment, even if doing so incidentally benefited competitors. This specific legal environment unequivocally enabled the kind of competitive knowledge transfer that Walter Chrysler so brilliantly executed. The lasting legacy of Walter Chrysler's monumental achievement includes not just Chrysler Corporation, which survived as a fiercely independent company until its merger with Daimler-Benz in 1998, and which continues its powerful legacy today as part of Stellantis, but also the enduring demonstration that profound industry knowledge can be effectively transferred and deployed to create significant competitive challenges to even the most dominant and entrenched firms. Walter Chrysler's journey was never just about steel, glass, or rubber. It was a masterclass in the quiet power of intellectual capital. He proved that while factories can be bought and blueprints can be lost, the true engine of progress is the knowledge carried within a man's mind. He took the secrets of the giants and used them to build a throne of his own, proving that in the theater of industry, the student can always become the master if they possess the courage to execute. He started as an apprentice with a 5-cent half-round file, and he ended by rewriting the rules of the American road. Today, his name doesn't just sit on a building or a car. It stands as a monument to the idea that knowledge is the only true monopoly. And in the quiet halls of history, his legacy still accelerates.